ويتوب العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم انا نسألك علما ينفعنا وانفعنا اللهم انا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وعملا متقبلا وشفاء من كل داء وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. We start today from verse number 54. We started last week, but we didn't maybe complete the verse. Okay. So, just to recap, firstly, can everybody hear me? Everybody hear? Okay, tamam. So to recap, last week Allah spoke about, so the overall context is Surah Dawrah. Allah exempts Himself. Allah exempts Himself primarily of the idol worshippers. Right? So the idol worshippers, they basically expelled from the Arabian Peninsula, in terms of my understanding, from Makkah and Medina in particular. Right? But now we have to deal with the people of the book. So in relation to the people of the book, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they are allowed to stay in the Arabian Peninsula, but they need to pay a jizya. Right? And then we discussed, and in a nutshell, the jizya in relation to the people of the book is exactly the same like zakah in relation to Muslims, basically. So there's no oppression or tyranny in as far as the imposing of the jizya is concerned. That's the correct understanding, and Allah knows best. And since Allah is talking about the people of the book, Allah tells us that the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, they veered off the straight path. That was a result of what? As a result of two things. Number one is they took their monks and their rabbis as lords other than Allah. In other words, Allah says one thing, but the Jew and the Jewish rabbi and the Christian priest, they say something else, and they follow what the priest and the rabbi says. That's the one problem. The second problem which led to the downfall. So the first is incorrect belief that led to the downfall. Secondly is mismanagement of public funds. Amwal and nas. Allah talks about amwal and nas. And then very importantly, Allah addresses us and says, if there was mismanagement of public funds by the Jews and the Christians, or the clergy in particular, let that not be the same for you. In other words, you as Muslims don't mismanage public funds. I think in context, the verses that we are discussing is of great relevance to us. I think I may have touched upon it last week, that a week or two ago, we had the State of Nation address. 5 points were mentioned. The fourth point that was mentioned was to root out corruption. Root out corruption. So the major part of corruption is when dealing with public funds. And we made a few examples of that. And one of the misnomers that I want to dispel from our minds is that we only consider something to be corrupt when the scale of corruption is large. So in other words, if it happens at the government level, it's corruption. But when you work for the city council and you get issued a jacket and you supply your entire family with a jacket, that's not corruption. You know, when a person has an illegal electrical connection and he has a water meter which is not paying for, then that's not corruption. Why? Because the scale, it doesn't matter what the scale of corruption is, it's still corruption. So what happens is, as citizens of the country, we have an obligation in our individual capacity to put our shoulder to the wheel and root out corruption. And the efficacy of that would be efficacy. Everybody with me? I know everybody is very educated and also in the class, but sometimes, I may use a word that, maybe some of us don't understand. So please forgive me if I'm being presumptuous and that you don't understand the word. But just for understanding, efficacy means the effectiveness. For us, rooting out the corruption, you see what happens is a normal citizen, let's call a person an atheist, he doesn't believe in a God, so he's governed by the secular system, isn't it? Now the secular system, in order to ensure compliance, what do they have? They have the law enforcers, in whatever form it may be, they have law enforcers. But for you and I as Muslims, right, what do we have? For us, anti-corruption is a matter of faith for us. Allah tells us here, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, oh you believe. If you believe, you won't mismanage public funds. So what happens is, we know that Allah is watching us all of the time. And the important thing for me in terms of look, the Jews went down a certain snake hole, we mustn't go down the same snake hole. What led to the destruction? Mismanagement of public funds. Now we took it, if you work for government, if I steal your money, Allah forbid, on the day of judgment, you're going to ask me, and I'm going to have no money to give you and take up my good deeds. But if you steal in public funds, it means that the entire populace of South Africa is going to be coming to you and going to ask you to repay them. It's difficult enough to repay one person, but the entire populace. So what happens is this whole idea, you and I, if you work for a company and you are using the laptop, they only allow you to use it in work time, but you use it on weekends also, you are corrupt. If you work for a company and there's excess printing paper and you take it home without having permission for it, you are corrupt. If you work for a school, and it's all, I'm talking about personal experiences that I've had. People have promised me a year's supply of detergent. I say, but where do you get it? No, I work for the school, I can just bring. That's corruption. We must weed out corruption. So corruption of what's not yours to appropriate it is corruption. And we mustn't become mediocre about this, we must become very strict about this. Because if you accept this type of mediocrity in yourself, you're going to accept it everywhere else. If you're taking paper home and everybody else is taking paper home, it's fine, it becomes a norm. And that's what people are going to say. It's normal. When you work for the city of Cape Town, they give you a briefing if you come from the corporate. Look, there's no corporate. Yeah, we start working 1 o'clock. Why? Because you see, and that's why how it works. If you come from corporate and you come to government and you start working hard, what does it do? The problem with that is it makes everybody look bad. And they can't afford everybody to be looking bad because you're looking good. So you and I as Muslims, particularly civil servants, we must be very conscious of these type of verses. This led to the downfall. And then consequent to that, I read an interesting article. What do you think is, and we must learn lesson, what do you think is probably the most corrupt country in Africa? All the most corrupt countries in Africa would be what? If you give an informed answer. Nigeria. Nigeria was, I don't know if it's still very corrupt. And one article, 22-page article written by one professor, the whole article is geared at how Islam and the advices which Islam gives, anti-corruption advices, how that can be the turning point for the country. Why? Because for us, corruption is a faith-based issue. You are not corrupt because you are Muslim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, or you believe. So you believe in a particular way, you conduct yourself in a particular way. Interesting article, you can Google it. Anti-corruption in Nigeria, 22 pages. It's a very easy read, also, but a very nice read as well. And what happens is, we're not falling far behind. What really, corruption is one, and corruption is also a form of lawlessness. What's happening to our country? I'm not talking about our country, I'm talking about you and I. What are we doing to this country that we call home? The degree of lawlessness is unbelievable. I'll give you a small example. Nowadays, in the morning at about 7:45, I drive past Jan Smuts. Now, when you drive past Jan Smuts, St. Athens on your right hand side, there's a barrier there. You drive over the barrier to come into Jan Smuts Road, as opposed to going the long way around. Why do you do that? When I look at the driver in the seat, he looks like Ahmed. I'm not Ahmed, isn't it? I'm saying that somebody as decent as you, he looks like somebody as decent as you. Like with a nice Fortuner also, coming over the barrier. This is becoming it's not one car. It's a norm. Lawlessness is a norm. Kind of the curves, this and other. It's a norm. We're starting to develop a very bad sense of lawlessness as a community on an average. We're starting developing an average now of lawlessness. Before myself, and I used to see guys like in Salt River, driving on the pavements around. Pavements. But I look at the guys of African National, I can sort of understand, okay, maybe, the road system there works like this, so I can understand. But now what's happening? You and I. We must stand against the tide, no matter what. This is a convenient excuse for us, everybody's doing it. And then in another book I came across also, and this is Quranic concepts which you need to expand, and really it's very real for us. Very real for us. There's a book out there, Toxic Charity. Mismanagement of wealth. So you're giving charity, but what's happening to the charity? The charity is being used to the ruin of the church in particular, right? How can we reverse that? So even when you're giving 100 rands, right? Toxic charity is what? when you go to the robot, you can't do anything constructive about the plight of the poor. So to appease yourself, not for the person, just to make your guilty heart feel a bit better, you give the guy 10 rand. You're part of the problem. I'm not saying you mustn't give the 10 rand. I'm saying you must make a positive, So charity, amwal and nas. Well, grant us the understanding, inshallah. And another worry that I had with our classes coming forth in a week, I was thinking, Sunday to Sunday, is there a change in our lives? Sunday to Sunday, can you measure a change in your life? Or has the Sunday class now simply become a habit that you come to the Sunday class and you relax here? The death of an act of worship is when an act of worship becomes an act of habit. The first Sunday class that you came to and the revolutionary impact it had in terms of your family and your life, are we still experiencing that? Because if we're not experiencing that, we have to relook at what's happening. And we must develop a sense of urgency. I have a conundrum, and I discussed this with you before already. I come to class and all the people I see are very nice people. Everybody in all of the circles and across the strata, if you want it from a what do you call that now? From an anthropological perspective. Anthropology, everybody is okay with anthropology. Anthropology is a study that deals with human behavior. So if you want to put me in an anthropological box, like sort of, you call me a connector. I'm a connector. Connector means that, I move across different strata of society. That's amazing for me. Today I meet Ahmed, tomorrow I meet another Ahmed. But the two Ahmeds, you follow me? But on average, across the spectrum, every person I meet, I hope I'm not like they say colloquially too, but it's good people. I meet like really good people. I mean, I come to Sunday class and I look at every single individual in this class, and it warms your heart to be in such company. And then I think to myself, but what's happening to our country? Because we are the country, aren't we? Yes, we are a minority, but obviously we can make a big change. Yesterday, my brother-in-law mentioned something unique. They invited me for a braai. Now, what's unique about the braai is, but what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas of 20. What happens is, my sister's had a braai. So, which means all my brother-in-laws are there. Right? So, that's most special braai. None of my brothers are there. My mother tells me, so what do? I go. So now I'm sitting in the braai there. So now what do you think we're talking about? Top of the agenda is ISKCON. Ahmed, don't you work for ISKCON? So now what happens is, after ISKCON it goes to the next thing. My brother-in-law tells me this. He says, do you know that this conversation we're having here, right, is just probably happening everywhere else, all over Cape Town, all over South Africa. But my thing is, if good people have the same concern, all of us have the same concern in principle. We might not know what the problem is, but we're worried about our country. But where to from there? So I'm saying that the status quo happens to be there because good people remain silent. Evil thrives when good people remain silent. And what I mean by silent is that, what are we doing to make a difference in our individual capacities, in our community capacity? And this class really must, for me, above everything else, must serve as, you take this, man kana maytan, that person who was spiritually dead, we brought him back to spiritual life. جعلنا له نورا, and we made for him a light. What does he do with this light? يمشي بي بين الناس. He takes this light and he walks amongst people. Ahmad, so if you get the light here on a Sunday, you take some of the light and you go to ISKCON. I'm just joking with you, it's joking with you. But you understand what I'm saying? So you work in the social department, you work here as a lawyer, take this light and take it with you. We must, every day it must be, what did I do today to make a difference? To myself, to the workspace, what stand did I make for justice, for the truth? At the least, what was given to me, am I doing it properly? If I didn't benefit anybody, at the very least I didn't harm somebody. So when I drive home, I don't go over the curb, because it's costing taxpayers the money, because I must fix the curb, because it's not a road. So when we come on a Sunday, take this nur, take this hidayah, take this guidance, and make it part and parcel of your life. And we must see on a week-to-week basis that the tide is turning. When a mother comes to the class, get some mood, impart it to the children, imbibe the children with those values, those qualities. And that is the idea of Yahdi lillati hiya aqwam. This Quran guides to that which is best and most upright. This is the opportunity we're getting every Sunday. We must take it with both hands, and inshallah, not only for ourselves, but for our communities, and for our families, and for everybody out there. And inshallah, we'll make a difference. Everybody make that intention, inshallah. May Allah accept and reward you abundantly. Tamam. So what we're speaking about now is Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, oh you believe. Maaf if I trap on your toes or anything, not my intention. It's really a concern. I'm sure you share the same concern. I'm sure you share. And I think what happens also is, some of the ulama said that, do you love this country? It comes down to love. Do you love Allah, you love His Messenger, right? You love your Islam, you love Quran. As a Muslim, we must love the environment around us. We must love the country that we live in. It must be, so for example, if you have love for the country, it will what's in you when you see that the whole place is dirty. It will, because you love the country. You have a sense of pride, and a Muslim loves his country. The Prophet ﷺ on the Battle of Uhud, what did he say? He said that Uhud is a mountain that loves us and we love him. Uhud is a mountain that loves us and we love him. The Prophet loved the environment around him, cared for the environment around him, looked after the environment. So it comes down to that. And we must love the country that you live in. And when you love the country you live in, you're going to carry the concern of the country, you're going to work towards the betterment of the country. But all of us, we lament about, and yes, there is a lot of negative things, but how can I be a small part, in terms of, doing the right thing? Inshallah, bi'idhnillah subhanahu. Allah grant us a tawfiq. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, oh you believe. Inna, indeed. And last week we spoke about the secret here, because Allah is talking about the Jews. But then He's talking about the problem which the Jews had, and then He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, oh you believe. You take lesson. This happened to the Jews, but you take lesson. Surah Al-Baqarah, when Allah starts with Surah Al-Baqarah, right up until Sal Bani Israel, which is the half of the second Jews, Allah only mostly talks about the Jews that came before you. Why? Because Allah is saying, look here, this is the lessons you can learn, not from your own mistakes, but from other people's mistakes. So the Jews before us, what was their mistake? Mismanagement of public wealth. So Allah says to you now, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. What does Allah say? Inna, indeed, kathiran, many, min al-ahbari wa-ruhbani. Many of the monks, many of the rabbis, what do? La ya'kuluna amwal al-nas. La is emphasis. Akala ya'kulu means to consume, to devour. Amwal al-nas, the wealth of people. So amwal al-nas in the church, when you send around or in the monastery, when you send around the money to collect, in the masjid when you send around, and what's happening at the end of the day there in that money, that is not one person's wealth, that is amwal al-nas. And what they were guilty of? Bil batil, wrongfully. And as an anti-corruption measure, Allah tells us in many verses in the Holy Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la ta'kulu amwalakum bainakum bil batili, wa tudlu biha lil hukami, li ta'kulu fariqan min amwalin nasi bil batili wa antum ta'lamun. That, oh you believe, don't devour the wealth of one another, don't use it as a bribery, so that you may misappropriate the wealth of a group of the populace, whilst you know what you are doing. And then Allah talks in another place that don't devour the wealth of one another unless it is by mutual consent. You don't take something from somebody else. That's corruption in terms of wealth. And last week, I think it all come back to me now. We spoke about akala ya'kulu. Allah used the word akala ya'kulu, but here it means not only eating but using it and benefiting it from in any way. Right? La ya'kuluna amwal an-nasi wrongfully wa yasudduna an sabilillah. And when you do that, what does it result? Yasudduna an sabilillah. When you do that, you are stopping and preventing from the path of Allah. How many things are there that we do? You as a Muslim person, and you and I as a Muslim person, number one is, if we're guilty of misappropriating funds, what happens? The person says, I don't want to become a Muslim, because see what Muslims do. وَيَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And they prevent from the path of Allah. The Jew at the time, when people knew that what is he doing? He is misappropriating people's money. Right? So what does he do? I don't want to become a Jew, because this is what Jews do. Today, when you make a promise, and Allah talks about this in the Quran, that you make a promise, and then you go back on your promise, and in doing so, you prevent other people from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What do they say? I don't want to be a Muslim, because Muslims don't keep their word. You follow me? People say that. So, وَيَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. In doing the wrong thing, you might say, no, I'm not, but actually what you are doing is you're preventing others from coming to the path of Allah. Imagine you and I had to be exemplary Muslims. People would want to become like us. They say of the Sahaba when they came to a given place, they used to tell the people, become like us. So when can you say become like me? When you know you're doing something properly and correctly. Now you can tell other people, follow me, follow my example. Can we say that in our workspace, wherever we are, can we say, that, become like us? Now, Allah goes on, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ. Allah talks about وَالَّذِينَ, as for those, يَكْنِزُونَ, كَنَزَ يَكْنِزُ, from the word kanz. What does it mean? To hoard. To hoard. وَالَّذِينَ, and those who hoard, what do they hoard? الذهب, gold, وَالْفِضَّةَ, and silver. And what do? وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَهَا, and they do not spend it فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, in the path of Allah. What does Allah say? Very sort of like sarcastically, فَبَشِّرُهُمْ, give them glad tidings. Now you give glad tidings of a good thing, but here Allah says, بِعَذَابٍ, with a punishment. What type of punishment? Alim. Okay. Now here's a very important point. There was a person, and I'm sure this would ring a bell to you, Abu Dharr al-Ghifari. Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, radiyallahu anhu. He was a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His nature, he had a very ascetic nature. So what would happen is, he used to go around in the marketplace of all places, and he used to read this verse. Those who hoard their gold and silver, give them glad tidings of a painful punishment. Right? Uthman radiallahu anhu stopped him. And Uthman radiallahu anhu said that, hoarding wealth is when you put your wealth away and you don't fulfill the obligation of that wealth. So in other words, if you hoard your wealth, what is the primary obligation towards your wealth? Zakah. So if you hoard your wealth and you don't spend it in the path of Allah, you'll get a punishment. In other words, you don't pay your zakah. But if you have savings, right, and you pay your zakah as you should be paying, right, and then is that considered as hoarding or not? According to the Jumhur Sahaba, other than Abu Dharr, they said it's not considered as hoarding. So you must understand between saving and hoarding. Hoarding is when you put money away and you don't fulfill the obligations. For example, now you have a lot, your bank balance is fine, but you don't want to touch your bank balance. But you must pay the nafaqah, and you don't pay the nafaqah. What is that? Hoarding. Because you're not fulfilling the obligation. You have a contractual obligation, you owe somebody money, but you're keeping your money in the account and now you don't want to pay. That's hoarding. Right? Even you delaying it unnecessarily. When your bank balance reaches a certain point, then only you prepare to pay the loan. No, to pay the debt, you must pay the debt immediately. So you understand that particular concept of kanz, no? Which is very important to understand. Then also in terms of wealth, we must understand a certain thing of wealth. Even after you pay your wealth, your zakah, and you have a balance of, let's say, 100,000 rands, Allah is very quick to say, look, that 100,000 rand, you're the custodian of that money. Use it in a way that will better yourself, your family, and your community. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. So even after the obligation of zakah, we must always be wary of having money, and it may be akin to hoarding. So we must always be wary. Despite the fact that you pay your zakah, that's fine. But also keep in mind, we mustn't reach, because for many of us, we want a certain savings. We reach the savings and no, that's not enough. And then we go to the next level and next level. Until what level are you going to basically be keeping your wealth and hoarding it away like that? Are you with me? Now importantly, I think there's a few points which our ulama highlight here, which I think is important to mention. And sometimes, these things, it's a bit, this is the right time to discuss these type of masail, Your wealth, is it your wealth? Your wealth is your wealth from an Islamic perspective. So we don't follow like a socialist type of idea, or a communist type of idea. Your wealth is your wealth. If you work hard to the extent that you work, that's what you receive in terms of wealth. You with me? So we give you the incentive to work harder because you're going to be the first beneficiary of your hard work. That's all good and well. There does, however, come some time where there's actually a limitation put on, even if we were to call it savings, depending on the circumstance, the prevailing circumstances around you. Right? So can you save money? Yes. But to your individual advantage, fine. But from an Islamic perspective, when you reach a point where your savings as an individual grows, but everybody else is losing out, and then we're going to give you a different ruling. At one occasion in Medina, and the scholars are unanimous that this particular ruling has been abrogated. If you wanted to, you can understand that this particular ruling was circumstantial. At one point in time, and Medina there was a famine. So it came time to the Eid al-Adha. So if you buy a sheep and you slaughter the sheep, who does the sheep belong to? To you, isn't it? What is your obligation? From the Shafi perspective, you must give a portion of the meat away. You must necessarily give a portion. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be like one sort of like chunk of meat, right? If you want to, like let's say for example, like a loin chop, like as part of it you have to give away. No prescription is given exactly what part, just a part of it. But the balance, can you take for you? Yes, it's completely yours. You with me? That's the ruling. That's today's ruling. Eid al-Adha is going to come now. You're going to do that. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was a famine. The Prophet ﷺ gave the ruling that when you slaughter a sheep, you can eat on it for 3 days. After 3 days, whatever is in balance, you can keep what will last you for 3 days, and the balance must be given in charity. Now you understand? So that, technically speaking, is your personal wealth. But when saving that is going to be to the detriment of the entire community, what's going to happen? We're going to put, I don't know if this is the right word, a moratorium on your wealth, and basically it gets distributed to the people. You follow me? Now what happens is, if you look in our times, so we're talking about hoarding, and it's a unique thing when you look at hoarding, and everybody must make their own individual sort of like, calculations in terms of how much money I have. Are we going in the future, are we able to recreate more wealth? At the pace that we used to recreate wealth. If you and I don't know economics, but I have a very basic understanding of economics. Economics is what? According to one definition, it's the allocation of limited resources for unlimited needs. Isn't it? Finite resources for infinite needs. That's basically what we are. So we acknowledge from the very outset that the world is, and the resources of the world is basically limited. That's what we know. Okay. So going forward, the recreation of wealth, is it like, if you look back 30, 40, 50 years in terms of the generation of wealth, how quickly would it be turning over wealth and generating more wealth? But now, if you go to the wealth, for example, resources, diamonds, you go to the big hole now, what is it filled with, diamonds or with water? It's filled with water. What happened to that resource? It was diminished. You with me? So in what's happening with, how do we recreate wealth going forward? When wealth has, the natural wealth that we have, and the wealth capacity of generating wealth is all coming slowly, grinding to a halt. How do we recreate wealth? So for example, you have 100,000 in your bank account, right? How do we recreate wealth? We recreate wealth simply by redistributing wealth that is currently existing. The way forward for the world, whether we're going to accept it or not, considering the fact that resources are becoming more limited, what do we need to do now? We need to redistribute existing wealth. And how do you and I redistribute existing wealth? Zakah. You didn't create the zakah from anywhere. You just took it from what you have already. But imagine we were to take a bit more of what we have. So what happens? Less for ourselves and more to go around. That is going to be a sort of a philosophy that whether we're going to do it like in our generation, like willingly, there may come a time where we're going to have to do it forcefully. But why do that? Why not be as forward-thinking as the Prophet ﷺ, when the time comes that we actually, like redistribute, and it can always be, brought back into the balance going forward. Because the rule is that your wealth is your wealth, unless maybe circumstances or religious obligation demands that you share that wealth. But the redistribution of your wealth, and that's why I feel, for example, like if you want to look from one perspective, from another perspective altogether, right? Islamic institutions can play a very important role in that. Because what happens is, they get paid from what? From your donations. But your donations was part of your savings. You didn't go get another job to get the what's. You just gave part of what was yours. So you end up with less, and you just gave a little bit. And what does it do? It has a big role in terms of job creation. If you look at our institution, something which is a sort of great pride for me is that we employ like 20 people, all in all. And what happens is, they're all looking after families. And where's the money coming from? I get the money from you. But what money is it from yours? It's your surplus wealth that you just contribute every month, and people are subsisting by it. You didn't go out to create new wealth, you're distributing existing wealth. So that's an important thing here, and you can see how it ties into against hoarding. You follow me? Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So those are a few other things. يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا. Now what happens is, the person with money, now spending in terms of Quran, and subhanAllah, may Allah grant us barakah in our time and so forth, that is something which I feel like needs to be written about. The psychology of wealth in Islam. Now, Quran, Quran is what? Many times, Many times Quran is what? Quran is like mujmal. Quran gives you like general principles. And you need a hadith to explain that, isn't it? You with me? But you also know that at some times Quran doesn't leave it to hadith to explain. Quran is going to tell you, look, I'm going to explain to you this completely, isn't it? Can you give me examples of that? Inheritance. So the fact that Quran takes it upon itself to expound on all the rules of inheritance, bar 1 or 2, tells you what? That this is pivotal, this is very important. Okay? Quran dedicates a lot of its what's name to wealth management. It's unbelievable. It's almost like, like if you wanted to, and Quran is a book of guidance. But many of us, what do we say? Quran is a book of science. If you're on that track, then I would say you'd rather call Islam a book of finance. Genuinely. I mean, proper finance, proper economics, how to manage your wealth. I mean, look what we're talking about all of the time now here. I mean, this is real. And they call it in today's time, what I'm explaining to you now, in today's time, if you listen to these shows and stuff, they call it, they used to have capitalism. Now they have conscientious capitalism. We were always conscientious as Muslims. Always conscientious. And yes, we're more inclined to the capitalist approach of things because you know what you work for is yours. So you have freedom of wealth and ownership. But we're conscientious about it at the same time. It's cutting edge. And Quran is talking about this. So now Quran talks about giving now. And Quran talks about every aspect of giving. The person giving, the person receiving. How it must be given, how it must be received. And then what type of psychology besits you as the giver and the receiver. In detail. And one of the worst sort of like when giving charity in terms of Quran is that when you give something and you hold the person to it, by way of example. And generally what is our attitude? If you come to the stop street now, right? And the guy asks you for something, that guy, I told you at the beginning that you mustn't give him the money, right? But what happens is, what's the worst thing you can do to him? The worst thing you can do is ignore the person. And Islam, you can't, from an Islamic perspective, if somebody comes there and they're looking and talking to you, you can't turn the other way and ignore the person. You can say, like, what's this charity? Greet the person, you give me a charity. Like my charity to the person there is, I roll down my window if I feel it's safe enough. And I greet the person, and I ask him how he is and everything, but I'm not going to give you anything. If it's a small boy, I'm going to rebuke you and say you must go home and all of that type of thing. But I'm trying not to ignore you. Right? Unless I do it subconsciously and I'm maybe busy with something, but which I shouldn't be, but so that's what you must. Now Allah here talks about, and this is unique for me, man. Quran teaches you that when you stop the car at that 4 ways, how you must behave yourself. Somebody comes to your door, Wallahi, Quran teaches you that how you must open the door, how you must give the bread, how you must receive the bread, how you must do the person. What you must do, what you mustn't do. Quran even tells you sometimes that you mustn't give the person. I mean, you know this person, he smells of wine, and he's asking you for a 5 rand, and now you give a 5 rand. Haram. Haram for you to give it. Because the circumstances clearly tells you that this person is going to use it for vice. You follow me? Okay, so how we deal with ourselves. So Allah says now, referring to the Jews, what's going to happen to them? يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارٍ. Allah talks about 3 things. What's going to happen is that their faces are going to be burnt, their backs are going to be burnt, and their sides are going to be burnt. Why is that? When a poor person comes to you, what do? The first thing is, you pull your face funny. And sometimes you pull your face funny, almost like you're blaming the person for the circumstance that finds it. Yes, many times this poverty is self-imposed. He's got a house. You was staying there. He developed bad habits and now you're on the road. So it's self-imposed. Yes, it's your fault. Why didn't you go, I wil jy is toe aan nie my broer claim met my and dit and no. The reality is that you're on drugs. Some of the guys on the street there, what do they have? They have houses registered in their names. I'm not telling you a word of a lie. A house registered in his name. He's staying on the street. Why? Because of his habits. But now, does it justify when we come there, what do we first pull our face? And what do? We turn away. Now a person who does it unwrongly, unjustly, right, and disbelieve in Allah, what will happen to him? His face will be burnt. Why? Because he pulled his face. His back will be burnt. Why? Because he turned his back on people. And his side will be like that. Why? Because he arrogantly turned his way around again and went. That mustn't be us. You can say no, but you can say no in a nice way. Are you with me? So here it's the punishment that suits the crime. That's unique in terms of Quran. Because now the person is asking you, like decently asking you for some money, but what happened is, you and I, with all our ears about us, we arrogantly, dismiss the person, from asking. Even if the person is completely in the wrong, whatever the case may be, what they're doing is wrong. And what will happen is like Allah saying on the day of Qiyamah, if somebody drunk person come and fight with you, now you argue back. Who's the foolish one? You the drunk person. You, clearly you the foolish person. So Allah's going to ask you, yes, he was drunk, he was wrong, but how did you react? If you react in the wrong way, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take us to task for that. So here, the punishment is a severe punishment which Allah mentions here. What did it say? يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمْ. On the day that they will be flung. What translation do you have for yuhma? Hamiya yahma means to be heated.
To be heated.
Yeah. So yawma yuhma alayha fi nari jahannam. On the day that, how does your translation run?
On the day that it will be heated.
It will be heated. No. Yawma yuhma alayha, upon it fi nari jahannam, in the fire of hell. Then what's going to happen when the fire of hell is heated up? فَتُكْوَى بِهَا جِبَاهُ. Then the flames will brand جِبَاهُ, their foreheads. Why? Because they were putting their foreheads like that. وَجُنُوبُهُم, and their sides. وَظُهُورُهُم, and their backs. Because this is basically how they acted. هَذَا مَا كَنَسْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends of this verse by saying, هَذَا مَا كَنَسْتُمْ. This is what? كَنَسْتُمْ كَنَزَ. The word came before the kana. Yaknizu means to hoard. And again, importantly, hoarding means when you hoard wealth and you don't dispense of your obligatory obligations towards that particular wealth, like zakah, nafaqa, and everything else. لِأَنفُسِكُمْ, for yourself. فَذُوقُوا, so taste. Ma, that which, in other words, the outcome, ma kuntum taknizun, of that which you used to hoard. Allah save us. And inshallah, when we get back together again, the next ayah, very interesting ayah, next week inshallah we'll talk about inna iddata shuhur, another one of the pagan practices, which we will talk about and draw some lessons from there. But for now, wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.